Well, for those who don't follow football, the NFL playoffs are currently underway. My Baltimore Ravens are playing on Saturday against the Houston Texans, and that's neither here nor there. I just want to mention it, because I'm excited about it. Much to my chagrin, nobody in the audience cares about football. You don't care about football, and you don't care about aliens, and those are like half of the things I care about. And yet somehow we make this relationship work. I don't know how we do it, but we do. So anyway, for the teams who didn't make the playoffs, it's been a bit of a bloodbath for coaches. Lots of coaches are getting fired, as always happens at the end of the regular season. The difference is that this time you got some legendary coaches that are getting the boot, including Bill Belichick from the New England Patriots. After 475 years as their head coach and after winning like 83 Super Bowls or whatever it was, he's now gone. And a few days ago, his replacement was announced. And the guy taking over is named Gerard Mayo. He's 37 years old. He's a former player. He has no head coaching experience. He has very little coaching experience in general. And he's the guy they're bringing in to take over the most successful, take over for the most successful NFL coach of all time. So we'll see how that works out. I'm guessing it will work out very poorly. That's my prediction. In fact, I'm even more sure that it will work out poorly after watching the introductory press conference for the new coach yesterday. Gerard Mayo, I guess we should mention now, is black. And that's a fact that shouldn't matter and shouldn't even be notable, especially in the NFL when like 70% of everybody in the NFL at every level is black. But it does matter because it became, of course, a focal point during the press conference, which in turn made the press conference a subject of discussion on social media with lots of people sharing their opinions about it. So first of all, just as context, it may be worth noting that Mayo explained in his opening remarks that after retiring from the Patriots as a player, he was first a player, now he's a coach, but as retiring as a player, he initially left football and went to go work in the financial field. And it was while working in finance that he learned a valuable lesson that will help him as an NFL coach. And here he is explaining that lesson.
I took a break. I went to Optum. I needed a break from Bill. I went to Optum for about 4 years. And I came back. And one thing I came back with, I learned a lot at Optum. Larry Renfro, Mike Mateo, those guys. I learned a lot at Optum about diversity, right? About diversity and inclusion. And you better believe it. Being the first black coach here in New England means a lot to me. But those guys taught me you have to take ideas from other people, black, white, green, yellow, it really doesn't matter. Old, young.
Yes, this is an NFL head coach taking over for the greatest coaching legend in the history of the sport, explaining how he learned about the importance of diversity and inclusion while working in finance. If you are a Patriots fan, it's hard to imagine a more discouraging thing to hear from the new head coach of your team. I mean, there are worse things, I guess. He could have said that he learned about diversity and inclusion from, watching Dylan Mulvaney TikToks. They could have actually hired Dylan Mulvaney to coach the team. That would be worst of all. We're not quite there yet. We'll be there in a few years. So that's where we are now. But in any event, this comment about diversity and inclusion, I think, lends some context to what happened next. During the media questions, during that portion of the event, when they took questions, Mayo and the owner of the team, Robert Kraft, were asked, of course, about the significance of Mayo being a black head coach. And Robert Kraft gave basically a good answer. He said that he hired the best man for the job, and that man just so happened to be black. He said that Mayo's color is not relevant to him. Like, he wasn't looking to hire a black man. He was just looking to hire the best guy, and this is the best guy in his opinion, happens to be black. It doesn't matter. So that's the right answer. Like, that's the correct answer. That's a good answer. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if that's actually accurate. I'm not sure if they hired the best man for the job or if they were looking to make a diversity hire. We do know that the NFL does a whole hell of a lot to incentivize/force teams to at least consider quote-unquote minority candidates. And I have to say quote-unquote minority candidates because, again, in the context of the NFL, black men are not the minority. So those are not minority candidates by any stretch of the imagination in the NFL. But anyway, that's the answer that he gave. And we have no reason to believe that it's not true. But Gerard Mayo himself had a different take. In fact, in his answer, he kind of rebuked indirectly the owner who was sitting right next to him. And he said this. Listen.
I do see color because I believe if you don't see color, you can't see racism. And whatever happens, black, white, disabled person, I've always, even someone with disabilities, I always, for the most part, people are like, when they're young, they kind of make the spot hot. Younger people know what that means. But what I would say is, no, I want you to be able to go up to those people and really understand those people. So it goes back to whatever it is, black, white, yellow, it really doesn't matter, but it does matter so we can try to fix a problem that we all know we have.
Okay, now, as I said, that clip went viral, and lots of people did not like Mayo's statement that he does see color. Like, that's the thing people are kind of focusing in on, is that he said that he does see color. But that's not the problem here. Okay, that is not the issue with what he said. Of course he sees color. We all do. Like, we all notice the races of the people that we are interacting with. Saying that you don't see color it's nonsensical. It's like saying you don't see height. Well, I don't see height. I don't even notice it. Like, of course you notice it. If somebody's short, you notice it. If somebody's tall, you notice it. Of course you do. In fact, every time you look at someone, you notice these facts about them. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to pretend and should not pretend that we don't notice other people's races. It's completely silly. So that part is fine. The rest is the problem. Because first, the reason why he says he sees color is if the reason had been, well, I do see color because I have eyes, and it's a fact about someone that I can see, and so I do see color. If he had said that, then that would be fine. But instead, he says that he sees color so that he can stop racism. Well, it's 2024, and a lot of us are trying to get our finances in order. There's some great news for homeowners, though. Interest rates have dropped down to the 5s, a lot lower than they were last year. If you've been buried in high-interest credit card debt, now is the time to break free with American Financing. American Financing can help you access the cash in your home to pay off your high-interest debt. Last year, these salary-based mortgage consultants helped customers save an average of $854 a month. That's like giving yourself a $10,000 raise. And that's a way to start the new year in style. If you start it today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. So call American Financing today at 866-569-4711. That's 866-569-4711. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net. NMLS 182334, NMLSConsumerAccess.org. APR for rates in the 5 start at 6.275% for well-qualified buyers. Call 800-685-5696 for details about credit card costs and terms. So this guy is, according to him, constantly on the lookout for racism. Even though as a black NFL player turned coach who is 37 years old and has been a star athlete all his life, he is unlikely to have ever encountered very much racism. Okay? And in fact, it's like almost all but guaranteed that I have encountered more racism than he has. In fact, that's like definite. And in the context of being an NFL player, like as an NFL player and now coach, you're not encountering any racism at all, ever. Like it just doesn't exist there. Yet he's constantly on the lookout for it, he says. And this is what it means to value diversity and inclusion, after all. I mean, that's what it means. He said he values diversity and inclusion, and now he's explaining what that means. And this is what they taught him in finance. Instead of teaching him, finance. Also, just the idea that there's anything significant at all about hiring a black coach is, of course, absurd. Again, 70% of the NFL is black or more. There are many black coaches. There are plenty of black head coaches in the history of the league and today. Now, there are fewer black head coaches by proportion, which, who cares? Just like there's fewer white people by proportion in pretty much every other position in the NFL or on the sidelines. But how do you end up with more white head coaches than black? Well, it's because a black person who is involved at football and interested in football at that level is just more likely to get into the business as a player. And like going back through childhood. If you have a black child who's very interested in football, the proportions tell us it's more likely that they're going to get involved as a player. Whereas if you have a white kid, now there's plenty of white kids that play football, but as you go up and up and up, it becomes a less and less white sport, shall we say. And so for white people, if they want to remain involved in the sport at that level, they're more likely to do it on the sidelines. Like that's the way it works out. And both groups are making millions of dollars. Both are doing fine, whether they're players or coaches. So we don't have to worry about either one of them. And there's no racism involved here. But the greater issue, I think, is just the idea that we need this guy to pontificate about racial issues in the first place. I mean, listen to what he said. Listen to what he actually said. So I took the liberty of transcribing it. And here's what he actually said. Quote, whatever happens, black, white, disabled person, I've always, even somebody with disabilities, I always, for the most part, people are like, when you're young, they kind of make the spot hot. Younger people know what that means. But what I would say is like, no, I want you to be able to go up to these people and really understand these people. So it goes back to whatever it is, black, white, yellow, it really doesn't matter, but it does matter. So we can try to fix the problem that we all know we have. Now, I'm not trying to be funny here. I have no idea what any of that means. Okay, there's not one coherent thought in that whole jumble. It's just babbling nonsense. Doesn't mean anything. We understand the basic gist that he's trying to articulate some anti-racism thing because he starts off by saying, I do see color, we got to spot racism, like that part. And so that we can guess that the rest of it is trying to elaborate on that point, but it doesn't actually make any sense. If I were to read you that transcript and without any context, you would honestly, again, not trying to be funny, you would honestly assume that I'm reading a transcript from somebody who was having a stroke. Or you would think it was a Joe Biden speech, which is basically the same thing. Now, here's the point. I don't blame Gerard Mayo for that. He's a football coach. He was a player before that. And for all I know, he'll be a great football coach. Again, I'm skeptical of hiring somebody with such little experience to replace especially the most legendary NFL coach of all time. But he could end up being, there's plenty of coaches that have been hired at that age and end up being great coaches. So it could be a great coach. He knows plenty about football. He knows a lot more than I do about it. But he's not a social commentator. Okay, he's not a philosopher. That's why we don't need, any time you got any of these people in sports, like with very rare exception, most of the time you got these people in sports, they're asked some question at a press conference, tell us about the significance of the racial this and that. What they have to say is, if you can even understand what they're trying to say, it's like the dumbest thing you've ever heard. Because this is not what these people, this is not their job, right? And this is not, they live their lives obsessed with football. This is all they think about is football, which makes a lot of sense if you're in the football business. But we don't need these guys to give us sermons. And in fact, it would just be better if they didn't. It really would be. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.